In the middle of a suburban neighborhood just outside Phoenix, residents are not getting their water from a tap. They are getting it from a truck. That is not a scene from a developing country. That is Rio Verde Highlands, Arizona, in 2026. Here's the part that should worry you. What is happening in Rio Verde is not an isolated incident. It is a preview. Across Arizona, 4 cities are standing at the edge of a water crisis that the housing market has not yet priced in, and by the time it does, it will be too late for a lot of homeowners. Today, we are mapping exactly where that risk is concentrated and what it means for property values. Arizona gets most of its water from 3 sources: the Colorado River, the Salt River, and underground aquifers that took thousands of years to fill. Here is the problem. The Colorado River has been over-allocated for decades. Every state, city, and irrigation district along its banks has legal rights to more water than the river actually produces. And Lake Mead, the largest reservoir in the United States, has spent the last 2 decades draining. In 2021, the federal government declared the first ever water shortage on the Colorado River. In the years since, the cuts have deepened. Arizona, as a junior water rights holder, absorbs those cuts first. At the same time, Arizona has been one of the fastest growing states in the country. More people, more homes, more water demand, colliding directly with a shrinking supply. Rio Verde Highlands sits in Maricopa County, northeast of Scottsdale. For years, it operated as an unincorporated community. No city services, no municipal water infrastructure. Residents relied on a pipeline deal with the city of Scottsdale. In January 2023, Scottsdale cut that pipeline off. The city cited the need to preserve water for its own residents ahead of Colorado River cuts. Overnight, approximately 1,000 households in Rio Verde lost access to running water. What followed was not a temporary inconvenience. Residents began hauling water from distant fill stations. Private trucking companies stepped in, charging hundreds of dollars per delivery. Some homeowners reported monthly water costs exceeding $1,000. The housing market responded accordingly. Properties that had been listed at premium prices sat unsold. Buyers who had already signed contracts attempted to exit. New construction in the area stalled. Let that sink in. A finished home in a suburban neighborhood with a mortgage and property taxes and HOA fees now requires a water truck just to function. That is not a theoretical risk. That has already happened, and the conditions that caused it, over-reliance on a single water source, no backup infrastructure, explosive development without confirmed long-term supply. Those conditions exist in every city on this list. Queen Creek is one of the fastest growing communities in the Phoenix metro area. Between 2010 and 2020, the population grew by over 170%. Thousands of new homes have been built every year since. In 2023, Arizona's Department of Water Resources delivered a finding that sent shockwaves through the region. Queen Creek and portions of the greater West Valley do not have a 100-year assured water supply. That is not a projection. That is the official government determination. Under Arizona law, new housing developments in designated active management areas are required to demonstrate a 100-year water supply before building permits are issued. The 2023 analysis revealed that the groundwater being counted toward that supply was simply not there in the quantities assumed. Governor Katie Hobbs placed a moratorium on new housing permits in affected areas, the first action of its kind in the state's history. If this information is useful to you, consider subscribing. This channel maps these risks with real data before they show up in the headlines and in your property values. The moratorium was eventually modified, but the underlying problem was not solved. The aquifer depletion continues. Developers have scrambled to find alternative water sources, but those sources come at a cost, and that cost gets passed to the homeowner, either through higher purchase prices, higher monthly utility fees, or both. In 2022, Buckeye was ranked the fastest growing city in the United States. Located on the far western edge of the Phoenix metro, it has absorbed tens of thousands of new residents who were priced out of closer-in communities. The city's growth plan calls for a population of over 1 million people by mid-century. Here's the problem with that plan. Buckeye's water future depends heavily on the Colorado River through the Central Arizona Project Canal and on groundwater banking. Both of those sources are under pressure. The Colorado River allocations that feed the cap have already been cut. Arizona received mandatory reductions in 2022 and 2023. Further cuts remain possible as negotiations between the 7 basin states continue. At the same time, the groundwater that Buckeye is banking as a long-term reserve was deposited over thousands of years. The rate at which it is being withdrawn does not match the rate at which it is being replenished. Scottsdale presents a different kind of risk. This is not a story of lower-income homeowners caught in a growth trap. This is a luxury real estate market. Median home prices above $600,000, facing the same water constraints as every other community in the Phoenix metro. Scottsdale has been more aggressive than most Arizona cities in planning for water scarcity. It holds significant groundwater reserves and has invested in water recycling infrastructure. Those are genuine advantages, but Scottsdale's identity is built on things that consume enormous amounts of water. Golf courses, resort pools, landscaped estates, the aesthetic of green in the desert. As water costs rise and restrictions tighten, the question for Scottsdale is not whether it can survive. It is whether it can maintain the character that justifies its price premium. Water bills for large Scottsdale properties have already climbed significantly. Some homeowners in golf course communities are reporting annual water costs in the thousands of dollars, on top of HOA fees that include course maintenance. The defining factor is this: the more expensive the property, the more water dependent the lifestyle it was built to support. 4 cities, different expressions of the same underlying problem. Arizona's growth assumed the water would keep up. What matters for anyone buying, selling, or holding property in Arizona right now is this: water access is not a utility question. It is a real estate valuation question. Properties without a confirmed, long-term, diversified water supply are carrying a risk that is not yet reflected in their price. That gap between perceived value and actual risk, that is where financial pain happens. Before buying in Arizona, ask 3 questions. Where does this property's water come from? What happens to that source if Colorado River allocations are cut further? And has the developer or municipality actually proven a 100-year supply? If the answers are not clear, the risk is not priced in. If this analysis is useful to you, subscribe. New videos map these risks across housing, affordability, and the real economics of American cities before they become headlines.